Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to give people some time to come in. I'm actually on time tonight. Amazing. Really fucking amazing. Tonight was a night where I didn't have any scheduled meetings that ran over. Nothing. So I'm here. Um, so Peach Radio Show will be on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. So I'm gonna go ahead and wait for some people to come in. So I'll start at 8:05. The topic tonight is should LGBTQ history be taught in schools? What are your thoughts? Feel free to type in the comments. I will definitely be able to see them. We are streaming on multiple pages. So I just want you to jump in and chime in, especially if you are a parent, because this is a parent topic. I myself, I'm a parent, but my children is past the grade school years. But I guess I'm a grandparent. I am a grandparent, and I guess this would affect my grandchild if LGBTQ history were to be taught in school. So, but if it wasn't, I would teach it in the home, and I would hope that most people that were born from the 70s on up would kind of impart wisdom about the community to their children and grandchildren, because our generation, 70s, especially, we were raised by people that were born in the 50s, the 40s, some cases the 30s, and that was a different time period, and they had different ideologies about being LGBTQ. So it's very important for us from the 70s, born in the 70s and up, to kind of make sure we speak with all the other generations after us to ensure that we break the cycle of homophobia. So, yeah, I'm here tonight. I'm excited to talk about this. I am a history buff. I really love history. Um, so I really just want to hear what you guys have to say about the topic. And then I'll get into my spiel about should it be taught in school and my thoughts. But I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and share this live right now. If you are watching, share the live. If you are watching, say hello. Facebook is really playing with my algorithms for some reason. Share this live. Share it to a couple groups. I'll share it there. But join in, join in, join in. Oh my goodness. How was your Tuesday going? Oh, 2222. A lucky day spiritually. Hi, Inez. It's a lucky day spiritually. I love 2222. I hope you guys are manifesting today. It's a great day. The numbers. We won't be singing 222 for a long time. I my me personally, I was born on 777, so I love multiple numbers. All right, I'm gonna give people a couple more minutes, and then we're gonna get in to talking about this topic. Should should LGBTQ history be taught in school? And what should be taught? What should they learn? And what is the benefits of it? Or are there any benefits? I personally believe that LGBTQ history should be taught in school. I think it would be very beneficial. Not only just history, but I also believe that in sex education class, I know a lot of us had it. If y'all remember, sex education was a mess, right? And I'm not talking about going in depth. Like, I know when you think about it, you think about that in depth um, telling exactly what occurs in an LGBTQ bedroom. I think we could minimize the details and share. I think that would help, especially with um, how to be safe and minimize the risk of getting infectious diseases. So I do agree with that portion of it also outside of history. And also, if anybody's watching, chime in. I also think at home as parents, of course, I'm not, I'm not having any other children, but I think when your child is young and depending on their maturity, when you have these conversations about, there's two types of genders, there's girls and boys, I think we should probably shy away from that and be really honest with our children. Let them know that there are other existing genders and different people out here. Let's take away the wow factor. Let's take away the surprise portion of it. Um, so I have a granddaughter, and I mentioned that earlier, and she's about to turn 5. And we had a little bit of difficulty with her because she goes to daycare, and she plays with other little children, and she's already in society, and she's picking up and learning things. And my girlfriend, she didn't understand the concept of girls can wear male clothing. So my granddaughter thought for a while that she was a boy. So we had to explain to her, like, no, she's not a boy. She's a girl. She's just wearing these particular clothing, and that's at 5. So I like to think that we gave her some sort of awareness, but I'll say about 2 or 3 years later, when she seems a bit more intelligent, I hate saying that, a little bit more older, I can say to her and I can explain to her that yes, there are girls, there are boys, there are non-binary people, and there are intersex people. And even if you don't want to go into the non-binary portions like that, just a mention so that they know that it's more than just female and male out there. But I do suggest that you introduce them to intersex people, which are people that have both gender. They exhibit both genders. So I really truly believe, at those young ages, maybe under 8, around 7 or 8, that's where you would explain that kind of stuff to them as they take their journey. A lot of parents that I encounter that are heterosexuals, they really don't understand the importance of just that one piece as being parents and educating your children about the LGBT community. That one piece, if you can get it while they're young for them to digest, then you did a lot, because then they can understand it, as as the knowledge builds on. Now, as far as school, I think LGBTQ history should be taught. I'm not too sure if it should be taught alongside of regular history, though. I'm not sure if it should be taught, by itself, or taught as you go along, pertaining in just general history. Maybe it should be a separate class to be more digestible, but I do think that it should be taught. I believe that when you introduce elements of history, you can kind of help mold and shape the person's young mind to understanding the LGBTQ plight, understanding the lifestyle, and understanding that LGBTQ people are human, which is the most important part. Most people don't even believe that we are basically that. They believe that we have other underlying issues, which is definitely, not the case. We're born this way. We've been here since uh, human beings been walking the earth, but for some reason, people don't seem to believe that that is the case. So I think the education piece of it will change that. Similar to, you know, learning about this month, which is Black History Month. Before we were viewed as, black people were viewed as being less than humans, animals, and the histories that, gave us a more of a human feel. You got to see that we actually were and are valuable to the community. We have contributed to the community through inventions, um, the arts. I mean, we just, and it's the same for LGBTQ people. And we have a very, very, very rich, rich history. So let's just kind of talk about, and if you're watching, please chime in. What are your thoughts? Do you think LGBTQ history should be taught in school? I just told you, I think yes. And I think also, there should be more workshops on LGBTQ history for people like myself that was born in the 70s and prior, so that maybe we can attend, because I've noticed in my journeys and through my nonprofit that LGBTQ people don't even know about one another. So if you don't know your history, what do you draw back on for um to make you feel inspired, to make you feel hopeful that, the future can be different, or to, just a role model? Because a lot of, if you missed the entertainment episode I had last Tuesday, I discussed the roles that LGBTQ people are placed in Hollywood, and they frankly, they aren't great ones. It's either we're down low people, or we're hairdressers, or we're I don't know, fashion designers. It's never anything significant, or we're just uh prostitutes, the butt of a comedian joke like Dave Chappelle, you know, or we're just it's just really never truly good when it comes to us. So LGBTQ history. I'm going to get into some pieces that you may not even know yourself. But I think it's, the second half of my questions, what should they be taught? And basic history, I think they should be taught at what point was LGBTQ considered illegal or an issue, and how did that come about? Because if you know the origin story, you can avoid getting in that same situation. Okay, because LGBTQ, like I said, have been here since the beginning of time. There are stories that are written about LGBTQ relationships during the Roman era. There's some written in the Egyptian era. There's some written, I don't know, in the 1100s. We have kings and queens that were of LGBTQ, famous poets and writers and creators. So where did this disdain for us come from? And I think if we start there in the schools, we could get our children on this journey as to understanding why this happened, and hopefully as they learn it, the reasons, and the children after them, maybe they can change it all. Because right now we're far, but we really haven't changed it all. So let's talk about LGBTQ history. The reason why there is issues within our society is because in the 1620s, let's talk about US 1620s. Now we all lived longer. Well, the human race been alive before the 1620s, right? But when the Puritans landed here, they created what we know as the gender norms that happened in 1620. That's something I think the kids should know. If you don't know what the gender norms or gender roles is, that girls should wear girl things, boys should not wear long hair, boys should have nice cropped hair, boys should go out and earn, girls should be in the house, and they should, I don't know, have children and cook the food. All of that started in 1620. A little bit started prior, when Constantine and they developed Christianity, and all of that started forming and shaping there, and a little bit of that came over into the New World, which is here, as well as slaves, since we are in Black History Month. But I think the kids should know that gender norms and all that stuff comes from Puritans, and a lot of things, a lot of beliefs that started in this country when we first settled here came from the Puritans. But I find it's amazing that a lot of the things, the Puritan beliefs, we have let go, but we managed to hold on to the belief of gender norms and gender roles. And also the Puritans also created the sodomy laws as U.S. Continued to colonize the states, as we continue to colonize the states throughout the U.S. So the Puritans are the first that's the creators of laws, and they created the sodomy laws. And then for those of you that don't know what sodomy is, it just simply means anal sex. That was outlawed. And anyone that participated in anal sex or in sodomy, it was punishable by death back then. So if you kind of look at back then and now, yeah, we came a long way. We're not getting killed for having anal sex, but it's still what we're going through now still isn't right. And it's still it's amazing that the thoughts from the 1600s is still carrying over. So I think that's something that we should teach our children, that a lot of the thoughts and feelings that people have against LGBTQ people are from archaic times, the 1600s, where people didn't even have running water or television, anything. All they had was their belief. I smack. So I think the children should learn that the Puritans started all of this shit. That they're the reason for the sodomy laws, and they're the reason why we have to fight against these gender norms. So that's one thing. I think they all should also should learn that again, sodomy was created by the Puritans, and the first person to get executed because they were LGBTQ happened in 1624. It's all documented. A young guy named Richard, I think it's Cornish. So as we go a little bit further along, I guess Richard being hung wasn't enough. Then two ladies were caught and they were charged with lewd behavior for being lesbians, kissing in public, hugging, and all these different things that go along with being lesbian. So 1600s, it all began because we brought over Christianity to the new lands as well as slaves and everyone else. um Along with this, it was not until the 1700s, which I'll say around 1714 or 16, that sodomy laws uh, were placed in the Constitution. It was constituted in the colonies, and it was definitely punishable by death. So in the 1700s, you could not do anything. All that sneaking, all that creeping, if you look like it, and they deemed you as being a person that practiced sodomy in any kind of way, or it looked like that, then you were executed. Smack said, I think the history should be taught. It can help those who don't know more educated about our culture. Yeah, and I agree. I think, like I said earlier, I think all of us, not only should the children be taught, I think that the adults need a crash course, because you do need to know where you came from to know where you're going. So I just told you 17, around 17, 14, 16, around that area, that sodomy was a defined law, constituted law in all the colonies of the U.S. So we had slaves, we had sodomy laws, we had theft laws. Most of it looked religious. Remember, I told you the Puritans were here and they started all the gender norms and all that stuff. This is stuff that our children need to know and understand so they can have an informed judgment. Maybe not the younger children, but maybe around, I don't know, 10 or 11, they can digest this information and make informed decision as to how they personally feel about our community. Another thing that I wanted to share, because remember, sodomy laws was punishable by death, but I'm assuming that LGBTQ people at that time had to be active, because Thomas Jefferson proposed a law in Virginia to kind of lessen how sodomy was, the penalty for sodomy. He wanted to lessen the offense. So he said, okay, instead of people being killed for being LGBTQ, let's mutilate them instead. Let's not kill them. We might need these workers, or we may not. We may need these bodies. We're building a nation. Don't kill them. Let's just mutilate them. And normally during them times, the mutilation will be involving your genitals. Like if you was a woman, maybe we'll chop off a breast, or a penis of a male, and hopefully that'll straighten that LGBTQ person out. I think that's something that the kids should learn in school from our history, so they can understand the plight of the LGBT person. We've, as a society, a community, we've been through a lot, and I think it's a disservice for history to forget. I'm able to sit here and tell y'all most of this stuff, but I'm gonna be honest. When I was just going through history, and I've been reading through it for months, a lot of it is just heartbreaking. Some of the stuff I even cry, and I'll share some as I go along on here. Now, in 1789, and this is a guy that we learn about in school, Augustus Vasa, or what was his name? Orlando Equano. He has a very popular book. I can't remember the name. He was a former slave that won his freedom. And believe it or not, as much as they talk about this guy during Black History, they fail to tell you that he was an LGBTQ male that fought for his history. And inside his book, he describes same-sex relationships between the slaves and the slave master response to it. And so again, just to go back, especially in the Black community, we're taught that when we were in Africa, before we came here, we weren't LGBTQ. That's definitely a falsehood. And, just to hear or read about Augustus Vasta or Aladu Iquano, and I will probably post his book up tomorrow on my page. To hear about him talk about same-sex relationships amongst the slave culture is very interesting. Very, very interesting, and it gives some perspective, again, about the existence of us prior to us coming to the U.S., and it also debunks that whole myth that the Black community likes to peddle, that LGBTQ is an illness that we picked up from slavery, which is not true. And I think that's something that our children need to hear, and it needs to be taught in school, because that's something that they'll hear in the street that'll make us seem unnatural. When I'm reading to you here that there's actually a slave account of LGBTQ culture. Along with Equano, which is a famous Black person that we speak about during Black History, we have presidents that were LGBTQ. But no one states that when we talk about the presidents in school. You got to learn about all of them. No one tells you. Like James Buchanan, he was LGBTQ. He had a long-standing relationship with William Rufus King, and he was with him until he died. Everybody thought this president was just a bachelor, and really he wasn't. He was just LGBTQ. Now, wouldn't it have been amazing to learn that in school? Imagine, maybe not so much for a little Black boy, but maybe for a young LGBTQ white boy to hear that there was an LGBTQ president. And I have something to inspire to be. A lot of people think, well, what was his name? Pete Buttigieg was the only person that ran for presidency that was LGBTQ, or was the potential LGBTQ president could have been elect. But no, James Buchanan was an LGBTQ president in 1857. So we have a rich history, and that's why our children need to learn these things. It's to humanize us and to give them a better perspective as to what LGBTQ is. It's not about us having sex. Most people associate us with only sex. But I just told you, two people in history. We were writers. We fought for our freedom during slavery. We had relationships during slavery. And we were presidents. So I don't know about you. That makes me automatically feel great. And I am encouraged. And I would love to get this in the school system. I would love for the children to learn about this kind of stuff, about LGBTQ history. I don't know what y'all thoughts are, but I know what mine are. So as I started going further into history, of course, everything is not going to be pleasant. But I think it's in the unpleasantness, that's where we really reshape the minds of people that think negatively or were taught negatively thoughts about being LGBTQ. Um, and the reason why I say that, I think about a lot of my white friends that I had, maybe during high school, because I didn't really see white people as much when I was in grade school, but in high school I did. Um, it seemed like once they learned about the struggles of black people, it made them a bit more sympathetic and made them see how human we actually were. And they kind of connected through struggles. And that's just not what whites, in general, we just connect through struggle for some reason. So either way, I'm going to share you the not so great things and things that I think that children need to learn in history about LGBTQ. Okay. Um, so I already told you in the 1600s that the sodomy laws made it illegal, and to practice, to be LGBTQ, you would just execute it, just done. There wasn't even any explanation. In Germany, it was still allowable to be LGBTQ, but in 1871 became illegal. And their laws were a little bit, um, they were a little bit more lenient, but I can't really say lenient. To me, it just sounds very archaic with them too. The first punishment was to you would lose a body part. Um, no, I'm sorry. The first you would be jailed. The second time you would lose a body part. And then the third time you would just be killed. You just be executed. So that was still going on in the 1870s in Germany, which is terrible. And these are things that I think our children should learn in history about LGBTQ. Another interesting fact that I found, and this one, it just tore me up when I asked you, what should our children learn and adults should learn. In 1933, I think we all know about Hitler and the Nazi Party, and we all know what happened with that. And we always hear about the Holocaust and what happened to the Jews, and um, all of those things, uh, the torture, uh, the massive amounts of loss of people. Very sad. Every time I think about that, the most relatable story that comes to my mind is the diary of Anne Frank, something that you learned in school. See, again, back to school. And that story really impacted me again. It humanized the Jewish people. It showed the plight. You can read about anything, but just having a pivotal character like Anne Frank at her age and all the things that she experienced kind of made you feel like you were there and you experienced the Holocaust right alongside her. A very devastated moment in history. But what I've learned alongside the Jews, LGBT people, whether you were a Jew, a German, no matter what your nationality was, female, male, whatever you you were taken to the Nazi camps also. And what I find interesting as I did my research, and again, the children should know this, as I did my research about that period of time for LGBTQ, within that Nazi camp, not only did Hitler's soldiers and doctors and whoever was part of his regime treated you terribly, but the people that was the inmates inside with the LGBTQ people even treated them very, very poorly. So it's like, we all in this terrible situation, but I'm better than you, even though I'm in here with you, because I'm not LGBTQ. So I think that's an interesting fact that our children should learn. Maybe around the age of 12, 13, just to get perspective on our experience, because this definitely gave me a lot of perspective. Like, we are in dire straits and you worried about my sexuality, and we all in this same boat together. So what's interesting enough, and you're probably saying, well, how did they know? um the Nazi gave LGBTQ people this pink triangle to wear on their clothing, a big pink triangle that signified that you was a part of the community, and that made everyone else that was inside of your particular jailed area, I'll call them inmates, the heterosexual inmates didn't deal with you if you had that pink triangle. What I found out was 100,000 LGBTQ people were arrested during the Holocaust. 15,000 were killed immediately. Said 15,000 people. I'm sorry, 15,000 people out of the 100,000 were kept in the Nazi camps. 65% were killed immediately. The rest that survived, and this is the heartbreaking part that I could not, I had to shed a tear. When when it was over, when the war was over and Hitler was killed and all the inmates that were left were released, LGBTQ people that had that pink triangle were still held up until the 1970s as degenerates of war. They were considered degenerates. So I think that's a fact that our children should learn and know about our dark history, about the treatment of LGBTQ people. And that's white, black, or whatever your race was. And I found that very disturbing after I've been tortured by the Nazis. And the US and all these other countries band together and free us. I'm not free because of my orientation. And if I live into the 1970s, then that's when I was released. So that's one of the things about our dark history that I can't vibe with. And that's stuff that our children need to learn about our history. Another pivotal part, another point in history, and I'm going to move further up, because all of that happened in the 1930s with the Nazis and everything. Because I had wanted to share the darker parts. Of course, in the 1920s, we had a really great era called the Harlem Renaissance, where being LGBTQ was the cool thing to be. Everybody wanted to be us. Everybody wanted to hang with us. Everybody enjoyed our art, our fashion, our music. But then the 1930s changed with, Hitler, the wars and everything, and Depression years. And if you know anything about that time around the war, when the men went away, the women had to get out and work. And that's when a lot of our what we call the masculine center women started really getting out and strutting their stuff and donning their men attire and going into the workplace. See, this is stuff that our children need to know, because then it gives them perspective. So when the men came back home, they expected the women, which, we didn't have rights to own things. We didn't have, we couldn't even get a bank account. We couldn't get a home. We needed permission from husbands. If you didn't have a husband, then you were considered a scourge of the earth, and we just didn't have any opportunities. So those women decided to fight. So you saw all those different movements going on. So I'm going to bring you up to the 1950s, and this is where we're in our grandmothers' ages when they're adults, and this kinds of shapes the way during this time how people really feel about LGBTQ, and it's the height of it, and they're trying to not so much kill us but try to control and reform. I call this the 1940s and 50s the Reformation age. Maybe that's what the schools should teach. That's the Reformation age. This is the age where we are looked at as, yes, they could be reformed. It's an illness, and it's treatable. Now, what sparked that? What really sparked that? If you watch one of my shows 2 shows ago, I told you that a lot of our grandparents and great great grandparents associated LGBTQ with feminism. And if you know anything about the feminist movement, that's what changed everything for our grandmother, where she no longer could just strut around in a dress and just cook the food. She gained rights. She was able to work, and it changed the dynamic of her household. The husband no longer had control like that, and the loss of control made them a little bit out of control. So we changed it with the feminist movement, and they confused it with lesbianism. What woman doesn't want to be under her man who wants to work, all that jazz. So we're during that time, and plus the civil rights movement is roaring and everything, and this is stuff that our children need to know. During this time, all of this stuff was happening, and this is why the views of LGBTQ is shaped this way, and why we need to change it. So let's talk about the 1950s. It's a popular occurrence that happened and was called the Lavender Scare. And if you have time, or if you care, look up the Lavender Scare. And during this time, and this is going to blow your mind, LGBT people were viewed as a national security risk. We were considered communist sympathizers because we were degenerate people. We were doing degenerate acts. We were hiding. We could be easily bribed. Just to share a little bit of history, back then, cops always been dirty. They dirty now, but back then they were dirty. They would blackmail you. They would say, if you don't give me X amount of dollars, then I'll tell everybody that you LGBTQ. Now, when you were outed back then, it's not like the outing of today, where a person might say, oh, this person is LGBTQ. No, when you were outed back then, it was an outing where it would be public. You would lose your job. Your family would lose its status and things of that nature. So, of course, people will be willing to give that money to maintain their status and to hold on to their jobs. So with the Lavender Scare of the 1950s, they figured because you were like that, you were at higher risk. You could be a communist sympathizer. All they needed to do was just blackmail you. So what resulted from that is there was a law instituted in 53 by Dwight Eisenhower that, oh God, this is just, put it this way. It was a law instituted that prohibited LGBT people from having federal jobs. You couldn't work in any kind of governmental agency. You couldn't be, there were astronauts getting fired. This is where you get the armed forces. You know that popular statement, don't ask, don't tell. People were being outed all over the place. It was a public affair. Um, just a mess. Just a mess. Several trials were being held, and this went on until 1973. What is that? 20 years, 23 years. I wasn't born. I would be born 4 years later, but thank God they settled this in the 70s. And as you can see, it's still spilt over with LGBT people having issues with the armed forces. So it all stemmed from there. So we're not too far removed. And I think this is stuff that our children needs to know. It was a case involved with this lavender scare. It was an armed service person. I can't remember his name. He served for many years. He couldn't even get his freaking veteran benefits because they found out he was LGBTQ. And along with this lavender scare, because they deemed us to be degenerates, that's when the APA made homosexuality a disorder. And then the invention of conversion therapy. And that went on until 1973. And for those of you that don't know what conversion therapy is, and it's something else that our children should be taught, conversion therapy was brutal. Now, we saw Nurse Jackie. I'm sure most of us have, where you saw the lesbians getting the ice baths, and you know about electroshock therapy, lobotomies. The one that I found just totally out of the way was the testicular implants. Like, literally, we're going to cut off a gay male's penis and implant a heterosexual dead man's penis on this man, because during that time they believed being LGBTQ was somehow stored in your sexual body parts and your reproductive parts. Like, come on. This is stuff that our children need to know. It really makes you rethink. I mean, come on. I'm trying to I'm thinking, if I was a homophobe and I heard all of this stuff, even this stuff would sound ridiculous to me, and I would have to say, you know what, you maybe this is a little bit, this is too extreme. Why are we going at these people? So extreme. Another thing that was going on during this time for you comic book lovers, it was something called the 10 cent, I can't remember, the 10 cent debacle or something like that, where parents actually banned their children from reading the Batman comic books because Batman and Robin fought crime and they went back to the same layer. And that appeared to them to be LGBTQ and sick, and against the sodomy laws. Now I guess we're going to give two cartoon characters conversion therapy, and it led to the invention of Batwoman and all the host of other female people that were introduced to the Batman and Robin comic. This is how crazy this society was. And again, like I said, we were we during that time they came a long way from the Puritan 1600s of automatic execution, but it's still hell. Slow death, losing my job because I'm LGBTQ and outed. That's a slow death. Um, Being taken through conversion therapy because of who I love. That's slow, antagonizing death, torture. And this is stuff that our children need to know about our history. There's only really one period of time that I really would want to have lived in the ancient times and then in the 1920s, but that was even short lived. So, goodness. Our children really need to know. Another thing that our children, the reason why they should know about LGBTQ history is because we not only change history for ourselves, we change history for everyone. It's Black History Month. Let's talk about Bayard Rustin. If you don't follow the IME Inc. page, please do, because every day this month, minus the weekends, I've been putting up Black LGBT people that are movers and shakers that you probably didn't even A, know that they were LGBTQ, or B, knew they existed. So let's go back to Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin essentially made Dr. Martin Luther King. This is something that a young Black LGBTQ person that's in school needs to know. This is something a heterosexual child needs to know, especially Black. This man wrote the civil rights movement but couldn't be a part of it because of his orientation. Okay? Bayard Rustin coached Dr. King, gave him strategies, everything. But he couldn't step into the forefront because he had a record of entertaining men. He went against the sodomy laws. He was locked up for it. What's interesting, and you can find it in various videos and documentaries about Bayard Rustin, Dr. Martin Luther King was threatened a couple times. If you come down here with Bayard Rustin, we will, they tried to blackmail him. The government tried to blackmail him. We'll say that you had a romantic affair with Bayard Rustin, and that'll destroy, again, like I told you, during this time when you were outed, it was public and it destroyed everything that you had going. So to avoid destroying the civil rights movement, Bayard stepped into the back until Dr. Martin Luther King could no longer deal with the threats and asked him to remove himself from the movement. Do your research. Research Bayard Rustin. And this is the stuff and the reason why our children need to learn about LGBTQ history. For our brown people, if you need history of reference, I say look up the Dance of the 41. That's a LGBTQ based historic moment for you. We have several pioneers that are LGBTQ. I think it's very important for our children to learn about these people. I only gave you a few that I spoke about tonight. I only gave you a few historical points of reference, but we have a long history. And I believe that it's imperative that our children have access. Trying to find a story that I thought I also wanted to share this with you guys. I'm sorry. If you're a person that is watching and you still believe that being LGBTQ is a new thing, I'm going to share something that I read today. It happened second century 130. So that's proof that we were here for a while. Um, it's about a Roman emperor named Hadrian. He was an LGBTQ man, and he was in love with a guy named Antius. Um, he went away on some type of diplomatic, event or whatever. Roman generals always have to go to the Senate and different things. The emperor has to be at the Senate. And while he was at one, Antius ended up dying. And Hadrian was so distraught that he built monuments to this man. He actually built a religious cult that worshiped Antius and even turned Antius into a god. And people worship Antius for decades. So, we have been here. It's stories like that our children need to hear. This stuff needs to be taught in the schools. I think, again, like I said earlier, it will humanize us. It will inspire little LGBTQ children. And more importantly, maybe it will breed less homophobic children. Maybe, they won't be indoctrinated to hatred by their parents if they saw another perspective, if they learned and they were able to gain a different viewpoint. I'm about to get off here in a minute. No one has said anything. I guess I'm saying too much, but I see you watching. Let's fast forward to now. LGBTQ history. There has been a push alongside gay rights and LGBTQ marriage that we were just awarded not too long ago. Since the 1600s to be in this country, what is that? Over 400 years of fighting. States like California, New Jersey, Colorado, Oregon, and Illinois have made it legal for it's actually legally required for LGBTQ history lessons to be taught within the schools. And again, I asked you earlier if it should be taught. I said yes, and what should be taught. In those states, those children are learning about prominent gay people, LGBTQ rights and milestones, and within their history classes. Again, I told you that I wasn't too sure how that would work. If the children should learn LGBTQ history alongside of regular history? Or should it be a whole nother class? I'm not sure, but I do know that the children should learn something. They should learn it. And I like to take my hat off to California, New Jersey, Colorado, Oregon, and Illinois to say kudos to you, because that's the first step to change education. You change your mind, you change your heart. You enforce rules, you harden hearts. That's just my motto. Tonight has been great. I love history. For those of you who have watched tonight, I hope you learned something. For those who will watch later, I hope that this inspires you to get up and go down to the Board of Education and advocate for LGBTQ history to be placed in schools. If not for you, for your children, or for that potential LGBT child that will be in your family. Let's end homophobia. 400 years is a long time. Again, we have come a long way from being executed. We have come a long way from being arrested and taken through conversion therapy. We have come a long way. Well, now I'm not even going to say that with the the lavender scare, because we still are getting over the residue of that with the governmental jobs and the don't ask, don't tell. So we still dealing with that, or getting over that. So, but we still have some things to do. And there are 50 states. We still have 45 to go? 52 states, I'm sorry. We still got over 45 to go. And we're going to keep this ball rolling. Starts with education. Please support, since I'm here on education, please support, if you're within the Delaware area, my nonprofit, I Am Me Inc. I'm the founder and president. Our main goal is to uplift and unify the LGBT community and educate better allies. Notice I said education. That's the main focus of the nonprofit. Visit us at www.imecorp.org. We have several events. If you like what I'm saying here, come out and meet me. We have a Sunday tea that occurs once monthly. Of course, it's on a Sunday. We give you food, we give you drink, we introduce you to the board. It's kind of like, as one of the board members said, oh, I guess they feel like they're at a timeshare. Well, if you feel like you're at a timeshare, I apologize. But while we're giving you this free food and drink, we want to tell you what we're about. And we're hoping that you'll help us with our mission to educate people, because I think that's really important. Education changes a lot of things. And hopefully, when I'm old and gray, things will be, on an equal keel, where people, where we no longer have to stress to figure out ways to improve the LGBTQ experience. It'll just automatically be equal. But, like the black plight, it's going to take time. And I would love for it to happen when I'm old, but I doubt it. But we have to keep pushing. We have to keep advocating. We have to keep educating. We have to get those young future leaders that are in school. We have to give them the knowledge. So I'm going to get off of here. I think I've spoke a lot. I gave you tons of information. I say research what I told you tonight and research anything LGBTQ. You'll find out. I mean, what I told you was less than a quarter of our history. It's more out there. And hopefully, in other broadcasts, I can share more. But I'm about to get off of here. Join me next Tuesday at 8 p.m. I will place the topic on my page. I'm not sure what I'm going to speak about. You can also join me Saturday. Most people love to watch Relationships Aren't Easy with myself and my girlfriend. And we speak about our everyday relationship, how it works, the dynamic of our relationship, the ups, downs, and how we deal with things. That is Saturday at 8 p.m. Less relaxed. It's a relaxed environment, and I think you'll like it. But that is my time. Y'all have a good night. I will talk to you next week. Oh, and join me at Sunday Tea. Check out imecourt.org. Y'all have a great night.
You heard what I said? Chill, chill. Y'all know I don't normally do this, right? So all I ask is you rock with me one time. Let go. Now that's a banger.